When it comes to purchases, one of the things we've got to be aware of is how we deal with inventory when it comes to our purchases. When we buy something, when we buy goods from our suppliers, whatever it is that we've bought becomes our goods, our inventory, or stock in hand. Some people call it stock on hand, trading stock, whatever that case is. So when we take our inventory, when we buy our purchases, whatever we now have in our company is now my inventory. It makes a lot of sense to control this inventory, both because there's a possibility that there could be theft and we need to control and make sure that we know who's taking the stuff. The only time I want that inventory to leave my warehouse or to leave my company is when it's being sold, or potentially I'm returning it to the supplier. I don't want to know that my staff members or someone else is walking off with my stuff. So we want to control our inventory. I also want to control the amounts of inventory and the quantity of inventory I have on hand so that I have enough stock to trade. I don't want to know that someone comes into my shop and says, I want to buy a whole lot of these items, and I go, oh, actually, I don't have in stock. I forgot to order. So at all times, I want to know exactly how many of each item I have on hand so that I will be able to tell them, yes, I've got enough goods, or I've got enough of the items, or at the very least, I know when to order more of them. Oh, we've only got 2 of those items left. I need to go and order more. So it definitely makes a lot of sense to keep track and control, or keep track of or control your inventory. We also need to keep track of costs. When I purchase an item, whatever I purchase it for becomes my cost. If I want to calculate my profit that I've made on that particular item when I sell it, I'm going to take my sales minus my cost, right? That makes sense. But that means that I've got to continually keep track of how much I buy items for. So you can imagine if I have 500 different types of items that I'm selling, I want to be able to identify how much of a profit I should be making on all of these items. I need to attach a selling price to all of these items. So how are we going to keep track of the amount of each of these inventory items, and how are we going to keep track of the cost of each of these inventory items, so that when I'm setting my selling price, I don't, for some stupid reason, create a selling price that's actually lower than my purchase price. And again, you can imagine with the volume of goods, a whole bunch of different inventory items, if I buy something for 150 Rand, I want to make sure that I sell it for more than 150 Rand. A couple of hundred inventory items later, you would be losing track of this. So we want to make sure that we keep track of our costs as well as the quantity of our inventory. We have inventory systems that we use for this. We're not going to go into a lot of detail here. I'm just going to mention them and make sure that you're aware of them. In further chapters and in further modules, we'll discuss the inventory systems a little bit more. There is a choice about how you can deal with this, and 2 different types of systems that we commonly use. One is to keep track of inventory items as they're bought and sold. So for every single inventory item I have, as soon as an item is sold, I take that out of stock and say -1. As soon as we buy an item, or as soon as we buy items, I say I'm putting more items into stock, +2, -1, +3, minus, and you can see all along the way, I'd be able to tell exactly how much I have on hand. The moment I buy something, I go, I've just bought 5 items. Tomorrow I sell something, I go -2 items. Then I buy more and I go plus another 4 items, whatever the case is. And that would keep track of exactly how much I have on hand. Or instead of doing that, I can rather take stock counts of every item regularly and just identify exactly how much do I have right now. And those are the 2 most common inventory systems we use. The Perpetual stock system will update the stock quantities as I buy and sell goods item by item. So I'll always know exactly what I have on hand. And that choice over there is called your Perpetual stock system. The word perpetual, the very word means continual. Perpetual means it's something that happens all the time. So your stock amount and your stock quantity in your system is updating itself all the time. If you sell something immediately, it takes that item out and says you don't have that anymore. If you purchase something, it puts your stock item in there. At any point in time, you know exactly how much you have. Whereas your periodic stock system, again, the word periodic just means something that's been done, not every time, not all the day, or not all the time, not every single day. Periodic means at different intervals. So instead of keeping track of how much you've got on hand all the time, you do a stock count once a month, for example, and go, okay, I've got 5 of these items at the end of this month. At the end of next month, you do another stock count and you identify how much you have at the end of next month. If you have 4 items, then we need to adjust last month's 5 to this month's 4. because last month I had 5 and that was the last time I looked at it. Now I only have 4, which means I need to subtract 1. And that's obviously going to be the difference between all my purchases and my selling. At this point in time, we are only going to focus on the periodic stock system for now. So we're not going to talk about updating stock quantities all the time, etc. At the moment, we're only focusing on periodic stock systems. This is going to affect you when you're doing purchases, because if you're buying items and you're using a perpetual stock system, you can imagine you're going to have to be very clear about what you're buying, how much you're buying, so that you can immediately put that into inventory. Where the periodic system doesn't really focus on what you're buying and selling, it just says, don't worry, I'll find out how much stock is on hand at the end of the month. So when you're purchasing stuff, we have to know what type of inventory system we're dealing with, so that we know exactly how we need to bring these items on books. So understand the difference between your perpetual and your periodic stock system. At the moment, we're going to be focusing only on, and we're only going to be dealing with a system that deals with periodic, so we don't have to worry too much about that. And the perpetual system we'll discuss in more detail a little bit later in the modules.